aí, para jogar direto na tela lá, F5 é mais rápido, você pode fazer pelo tradicional aqui, mas eu uso muito F5. Ok?
Ok. Mas eu devo seguir.
Ok.
Acho que não vai precisar trocar de tela.
Eu vou deixar a música tocando, depois a gente vai ver.
Ah, tá. Vou precisar mudar
Só
de tela
tirar.
então, tab, alt.
Ou você pode vir aqui direto, se você preferir fazer isso agora, né? Só os pegar alt tab, que é mais rápido. Deixa eu ativar.
Megafone pré-instalado. Ele entra em hyperdrive. Ele entra em hyperdrive. Vamos ver se select store initial query. Let's close our eyes and try and relax. Dear Father of infinite love and mercy, who has infinite patience with all of our mistakes, with our moral laziness. Dear Jesus, our Master, teachers of this house, we thank you for being here one more Sunday, beautiful day that we are dedicating to ourselves, that we are dedicating to improve ourselves, to take care of our souls. Dear Master, may today we learn a little bit more of the lessons you came to teach us so lovingly and so willingly, regardless of the way we treat you. We ask our mentors to enlighten us today, to help us open our ears to the contents, to help us ask ourselves the right questions so we can get to the right answers. May today's meeting be very productive. So be it. Okay. This is not my computer, so please bear with me. Oh, there. No, not working. There we go. Okay, so today's theme is sheathe your sword. Embainha tua espada. Do you guys remember what we talked about 2 Sundays ago? Well, you guys are supposed to help me, right? Patience in times of thanks. Patience in times of terror. We were talking about terrorism, acts of terror, terrorists. So, and we said that we were going to talk about a different kind of terrorism today. So let's see what it is. First, we're going to go through a very quick review of the beginning of last time. So when you hear the words terror, terrorism, and terrorists, how do you feel? How does it make you feel? Terrified, okay, bad. Afraid, fear, yeah. When you find out about an act of terror or terrorism, how do you react? Run and post on Facebook that you're praying and ask everybody to pray. You feel that that's unfair somehow. Okay. To whom? The victims. What do you know about terror, terrorism, and terrorists? Do they all wear turbans? Are they all from the Middle East? Not necessarily. So what does the dictionary say? So what is terror, terrorism, and terrorists? According to dictionary.com, terror is an instance or cause of intense fear or anxiety, violence or threats of violence used for intimidation and coercion. Terrorism, systematic use of violence and intimidation to achieve some goal. Right? Cintia, are you hiding? Escondendo. Terrorist, a person who employs terror or terrorism. Does that match too? So far, everybody's on the same page. And this is just a revision of what we saw last time. So from dictionary.com. Now I'm going to ask the same questions I asked last time, them right away. We're going to wait and answer them after. So, who are these terrorists? Last time we talked about that not all of them, but many of them are the exact souls or people or spirits who suffered with the Crusades, right? They suffered a lot in Christian hands in name of Jesus and God. They haven't been able to forgive yet. So now they were the persecuted. Now they're persecuting because they still haven't been able to forgive. Because we know the one fatalism, the one determinism in Spiritism is that everybody will evolve. No matter how long it takes, you will get there. That's the only thing that is for certain. So no matter how long it takes for them to forgive, why do these terrorist acts happen? Why is it allowed? Why does God do that to us? Are there divine laws involved? If a divine law is something higher, how can there be a divine law involved in something so terrible? How can we diminish or even stop these terrorist acts from happening? So now we're going to see something different from what we saw last time. Same beginning, same questions, same everything. I don't know if everybody, well, I know not everybody, but is anybody here in the WhatsApp group Espiritismo no Canadá? Some of you might be. This group was formed after Espiritizar project was here last year, and almost every day, Lacordaire, who is one of the facilitators back in Mato Grosso, almost every day he sends us an audio message from a Spiritist website called Momento Espírita. They are awesome messages. Some of them hit me right in the face. And I found this text in one of the pages of Momento Espírita. At the end, if you guys want to take a picture, I have all the links to all the websites that I used. So this text is by Raul Teixeira. Does everybody know Raul Teixeira? He's a well-known spiritist, and he has quite a few charity projects, and he focuses mostly on the family. He says that the family is our laboratory. It's our microcosmos. However we behave with our family is how we're going to behave outside. So if we learn with our smaller self, we're going to bring it to our macrocosmos, okay? And the text is called These Other Terrors. It's not the complete text, just a few pieces because it was pretty long. But the text is there if you want to read the whole thing in Portuguese. Terrorist, as a person who employs is a person who employs terrorism and who spreads scary rumors or predicts bitter events. Kind of what we saw before in the definition of dictionary.com. Therefore, it was a question. Sorry, I was dictating to the computer. So is terrorism far away from us? Or if we can take a closer look, could we say it's part of our daily life more than we imagine? How? Could we possibly say that many of us, in one way or another, spread terror? How do we do it? When, for example, a father tells his daughter, if you marry that man, I will kick you out of the house. Sorry, I revised 3 a.m. He's making a threat that causes intense fear and therefore an act of terrorism. When a husband or a boyfriend tells his pregnant partner, if you don't take the baby out, I'll leave you, he is committing an act of terrorism and inciting the murder of an innocent being. When a mother tells her small child that if they don't obey, she will leave the house and the child will be on their own, she is committing a very serious act of terrorism, imposing fear and panic to a child who trusts their parents. Children who are aware of their parents' worries and terrorize them with empty threats of suicide or running away from home are domestic terrorists at large. At large é a solta. Demands and threats from bosses who know the employees need the job to survive are terrorist acts that cause unhappiness and kill hope. Where do we see that kind of behavior a lot? In Brazil, right? If you don't do it right, there's a whole line up there waiting for your job to work for less. Unfortunately, there is that kind of environment there.
We have something similar here, but it's not direct. It's just indirect. Very nice. They don't tell you, but you know.
You know, probably
They're just
2 years ago, I would say, nah, Andres, I don't think so.
all
Because I've had here in Canada, I've been here for 15 years, and here I've had the best bosses ever. But about 2 years ago, the whole team switched. They changed the infrastructure, and now I have two bosses who behave exactly like the stereotype of Brazilian bosses. The stereotype, because there are amazing bosses in Brazil too. So it's here, it's a little more diluted because of the culture. It's not so concentrated as it is there. But yes, because again, there may be the cultural stereotype, but we are still individuals. We still have our free will, and we still have the background from past lives. We still bring all of our egos with us, life after life after life, that have some effect right now, unless we do something to change it. But yeah, I would have disagreed with you a few years ago, but now you're absolutely right. It's a little more, yeah, it's not so intense, but it's there. Now, not just bosses. If we talk about religion, if you think about religious leaders, religious people who threaten the followers with punishment, with eternal penalties. Where did we see that before? Making dreadful and vengeful, making painting God as dreadful and vengeful, and he's going to punish you. They are also spreading panic and terror. And they're acting freely, and they followed by millions of people. And it is terrorism, for sure. Prejudice in any shape or form is also a kind of terror. And we will find it in all social groups. Until now, somebody could be like, yeah, I'm in none of the past ones. That I don't. But when it comes to prejudice, don't tell me. Just analyze, just think to yourselves. Have we never had any prejudice? Social class, skin color, types of jobs, right? One of the most common things I see here is immigrants who have prejudice against other immigrants. right? Because, yeah, I'm a better immigrant than he is. Are we really? And not only that, as immigrants, maybe in Brazil, we had a certain status. Maybe we were like one step above and we were looking from the top. But the moment, like Cynthia says, the moment you get off the plane, you have to put on your humility sandals and walk out the airport because we have to start everything again. We have to prove ourselves again and again and again and again and again and again and again. So if we felt prejudice against us, wouldn't it be natural that we wouldn't have it against anybody else? But we still do. Right? Thus, assim sendo, let us not think that terrorism is present in the hearts of this or that people, this or that race, because it is in the human soul, regardless of nationality and religion. Let us not think that terrorism is present in less civilized people. Is that what we say, right? Oh, Middle Eastern, they're not civilized. They're terrorists. I'm such a nice person. It is in each and every heart. Terrorism is in each and every heart capable of promoting terror, regardless of their level. Let us keep in mind that the big wars and big terrorist acts are fed, são alimentados, by smaller wars and acts of terror, which do not seem important. You know those small things that you're like, it's a phase, it's gonna pass. But it just escalates. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it gets out of control. Let us think about this and start, once and for all, an effective action for peace. Let us, I was really sleeping. Let us start by lowering our inner weapons of aggressiveness, slander, indifference, infidelity, violence, etc. Because all of these are acts of terror. All of these promote fear. Let us choose to build a world of peace, pacifying our homes, our workplace, our own soul.
Just a comment on this part that led us to build a world of peace. Yesterday I was listening lecture, and they're talking about being to watch all the bad things in the world and be there like just a watch.
Just the audience.
Just the audience. And then the guy was saying that we all have a role in this world, regardless on your contribution. You need to be big, whatever. But then he was talking about the gang, and he was saying that man, he was there and then he stood up to the British army in a pacific way, and he showed the world that it's possible to stand up for your cause, like Martin Luther King as well, without spreading the terror,
without fighting violence with violence, right?
And then it made me think, like, as spirits and people that believe in an eternal spirit, it's so important for us to be peace. And I mean, sometimes we see many conflicts, and sometimes even in ourselves, conflicts everywhere. Why the cosmos is so organized, and we don't see war on the cosmos. We don't see planets shocking each other, crazy stuff, because we have these violent tendencies that we see as the terrorists in our own lives. And then that these 2, 3 paragraphs,
Mm-hmm.
I think, and as you said, it's very important for us to do a reflection on how we can contribute to the peace because we can.
And again, it's how many times have you seen? I've seen it in houses, you know, with those vinyl sentences that people stick to the wall and on Facebook, and you see it everywhere. Um, a quote by Gandhi: "Be the change you want to be in the world." It's such a beautiful phrase. Does anybody actually stop to reflect upon it? Be the change you want to see in the world is a lot of hard work. Because being like everybody else is done. I don't have to do anything extra. I already am like everybody else is. Stereotypically speaking, of course. But if I really want to make a change, there's no point preaching and telling everybody. Can you guys hear me well, or is that too loud? You go like, so I don't know if you can hear, if it's too loud. Okay. So what we need to think is, it's easy, you know, for anybody to go on Facebook and spread those beautiful things and talk about Gandhi and talk about Martin Luther King and whoever, whatever. But do we follow that? Or is it do as I say, not as I do? Aren't we tired of that? How many times did we criticize our parents? Let's go back to the smallest cell, our family, where everything starts. How many times have we criticized our own parents for telling us to do something and doing something different? For those who have children, nieces, nephews, haven't we ever done the same? Told them to do something we don't? Even though we know it's better for them. We're not being mean to them. We wish them well. We are giving them the right piece of advice. But we don't follow it. Because hopefully they're going to be better than us. I'm already like this. I have no strength to change. What is done is done. I'll leave it for next time. If I believe in reincarnation, I'll deal with that next time. How many times have we said that before? And
it's amazing when we have children, because we are always trying to educate them and say, no, you don't do that, you don't. But then sometimes they, Kyle, now that is 10 years old, they remember me. Mommy, you are telling something to me that you didn't do yesterday. So it's just, I think it's really simple. You just need to be the example. Try to be an example, a good example for your children, for anybody.
And the key is reflection.
Yeah.
Because when Kyle tells you that, could you just shut him up? But could you just shut him up? You can. Like a lot of older parents did it. Like, you shut up, you're a kid. You don't have a say.
No.
But if we if we accept that they are right, we reflect and we try to think of ways we can change it and actually do what we tell them to do, or even think about what we're telling them to do, if it's really a good choice or if it's just what we would do, but it's not necessarily the best choice. So it all comes down to discernment, to being able to tell not just good from bad, but good from better. Because this might be good, but if this is way better, why just stay in the good? One step up, right? Not just for our kids, or nephews and nieces, or parents, because at our age, we feel like we're entitled to give our parents advice too, right? Yeah. So when we act like this, when we try to start from ourselves, when we start to be the first ones to not fight, to break the small wars, the small fights, we are starting in the only place we can start, ourselves, because we can't change anybody else. We can only change ourselves. I can try and change Otavia as much as I want. Right? But I can't. I can't change Otavia. I can give her pieces of advice. I can tell her my experience. I can give her a book. I can do a million things. But I cannot make the change for her. Because only we can change ourselves. Nobody else. And the only place we can start changes is not in our house. It's not with our kids. It's with ourselves. So the text is called Esses Outros Terrorismos. It's from the website Momento Espírita, and it's based on a lecture given by Raul Teixeira in 2001. So now, let's go back to those questions again. And the answers are quite different from last week, or 2 weeks ago. So who are these terrorists Raul Teixeira is talking about? Are they the guys in the Middle East? We are. You know, even those pranks that, you know, you think it's funny, but if a practical joke is causing fear or panic or anything, is it loving? Is it charitable? Is it fair? Who gave us the right to spread fear? Who gave us the right to scare someone? Do we like feeling scared? Are we treating everybody the way we want to be treated when we do stuff like this? So in the past, might have been funny because we didn't know better. We didn't have good discernment. But from the moment we start thinking about it, any kind of joke can be terroristic. No, that word does not exist. Can be an act of terror. And why do these acts of terror happen? These ones how we just talked about, that we just talked about. Why do they happen?
Because I think people want to impose their will. Like if you don't do this way, you are going to suffer. It's the consequence of it. If you marry this guy or girl, you will be out of my will or whatever.
Yeah, you don't get a dime from my money.
Yeah, exactly. You want to impose your will.
You're imposing your own truth. Yeah, not the universal truth, not the divine laws, but your distorted truth. The answer I'm looking for is a little bit before that. It's I would say something a bit more why that happens to. What in us makes us do that? Our ego, yes, it is our ego. But why? Because we are still limited. We are still apprentices. We're just moving from being completely ignorant to having some discernment. We're starting to awaken our conscience. And this is why sometimes we don't do everything wrong. We get a lot of things right too. Why do we get a lot of things right? Because our self-conscious kicks in. Because you know right from wrong. Sometimes you just get comfortable with wrong and you don't want to change. But sometimes we make the effort and we do the right thing. But we are still in the apprentice phase. That's why that happens. happens. A father doesn't terrorize his daughter because he doesn't love her. He's bringing a lot of baggage from all the experiences he had before. And nobody goes backwards, right? In evolution, you can stay still, but you cannot go back. We're not going to reincarnate as dogs or flowers, right? We do not go back. So in that sense, we are evolving. We're getting there, one step at a time. But these things still happen because we are not using our self-conscience as much as we should. So we are still trying to overcome our limitations. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't. The key is, whenever we don't, instead of just feeling self-pity or, oh, I don't deserve, oh, I'm terrible, or whatever, just understand it was a mistake, learn from it, move on, trying to do better. Are there any divine laws involved in those other terrors? What divine laws can we think of? Yes, first and foremost, love, justice, and charity. Action, yes, yeah. Cause and effect. So law of cause and effect, law of love, justice, charity. Can I do whatever I want? So what law is that? Law of liberty or law of freedom. So yeah, and it comes hand in hand with action and cause and effect. And one more, liberty, law of liberty. But I can do whatever I want, but I am responsible for whatever I do. So law of responsibility too. And then, because I am responsible, there's the law of cause and effect. Because if I weren't responsible for what I did, like sometimes we would like to believe it wasn't my fault, it wasn't me, didn't do it. So as much as we would like to skip the law of responsibility, it's right there waiting for us. And then comes law of cause and effect. Okay. Law of mercy. And a biological law of reincarnation. The opportunities we have to come back with people who somehow, even though we don't see it right now, will give us opportunity, will help us evolve, develop our virtues. It's very easy to be patient when you have nobody in your life that tests your patience. When nobody's testing your patience, it's very easy to be patient. So the people that come in our lives and challenge and test our patience, they are a blessing. They are giving us the opportunity to actually develop patience. I can't develop muscle if I don't exercise. Most definitely. Most definitely. Not ironically, but truly, because it is an opportunity. The thank you doesn't work. It's a real deep breath, and thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to practice my patience. And meditation techniques, and locking the bathroom door. Right? It cleans the tear ducts. It's very good for you. It's awesome. There's one more law, but we are going to talk about it in a few slides down the road. How can we diminish or even stop these acts from happening? Whoops, sorry. Da, 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 da. Yeah, I ruined my own thing. So how can we diminish or stop? Will they go away on their own? Will my neighbor stop being, I'm trying to find a word that is not bad, it's not coming to me. How can I stop my neighbor from being inappropriate with his children, with his wife, or her husband? Because, man, do I know some abusive women. Can we stop them, first of all? Be the change you want to see in the world. And that's exactly it. Change. The only way we can diminish is change, because it's a vicious cycle. The only way to break the cycle is make some change. You gotta break it somewhere. If you don't break it, if you don't make a change, everything is gonna stay the same and the same and the same and the same. And there's another beautiful law that doesn't allow it. The law of evolution. Everything evolves, not just people, planets, solar systems, galaxies, the whole universe evolves. We can sit and watch, or we can be part of it. In a good way, not in a bad way. Now, how does that change happen? Is that I wake up and I turn the page. It's a new leaf, new book, new everything. Usually that lasts from 6 to 6:15 a.m., right? So I am a brand new person, new leaf on the, yeah, 15 minutes. And I'm already cursing and I'm late and eat the food, kids, I need to go. So how does change happen in ourselves? Slowly, gradually, because we have potentials that we have to touch. We need to touch our potentials. But sometimes we get a bit too lazy to reach. Because this is my comfort zone. Everything will get better. Everybody will change or benefit, and we're all good and happy. Maybe. Good for the people who decided to change. Bad for us who decided to sit and watch. Because we won't be evolving. We won't be following in the same steps. Now, can we change? Is it possible? Because a whole lot of people say, oh, I'm like this. I'm too old to change now. Oh, now you touched it. Because sometimes we say we want to change, but do we really mean it? Because again, change is not just decision. Decision is the most important first step. But after deciding, we have to, exactly. If we don't act, how can we change? I decided my eyes are going to turn blue. Does that work? Yeah, now with contact lenses, it does. Okay, it was a bad example. But I still have to go and buy the contact lenses. So, yeah, it's not just wishing. It's not, the genie in the bottle. We have potentials that we need to touch, that we need to reach for. But that involves the other beautiful law that I was talking about that we all try to avoid. Which one do you think it is? And it's not just the law, it's in life in general. We avoid it as much as we can. Out loud more.
Labor.
Yes, the law of labor, law of work. Because taking action implies working on something. And if I can skip work, only problem is we cannot call in sick to God. Oh, I mean, we can try. But somehow, something tells me he kind of knows. Yeah, right? But something tells me he kind of knows. So in reality, I can avoid working on all my issues as long as I want, because it's the law of liberty. I have this freedom to do it. It's my free will. However, I am responsible for everything I do or don't do to myself too. Not just to other people, but to myself too. When I deny myself, when we deny ourselves the possibility of evolving, of improving, it's a crime against ourselves too. Crimes are not just against others, they're against ourselves too. So we have all of those laws attached. So can we try and break? Oh, we can try as much as we want. Just not gonna work. And the longer we choose not to act, what happens? So it start, and then we need a nudge, right? We need a little nudge to move on. The first nudge is what? Pain. Something hurts. I need to do something. If I choose not to do something about the pain, it becomes suffering. Pain is a lesson. Suffering is an option. When pain comes, we can choose to embrace the lesson lovingly, thank the lesson, thank the people who provided the lesson, learn from it, and move on. Right? Because we will only suffer if we choose to. If we choose not to learn, then it becomes suffering. Because, you know, just like a cow, we're chewing and chewing and chewing, and we're not swallowing. We can't digest it because we can't move on. Right? We're there hurting ourselves and hurting and hurting and hurting and hurting. We don't allow ourselves. And how do we get there? There are so many techniques to change behaviors that we don't like. Have you ever treated a friend or made a joke, or whoever has kids or nephews or nieces, brothers and sisters are a big one. Have we ever done or said something, we thought about it, and we realized I've done it? And then you're going to do it again, and then you do it again, and you realize it is a typical behavior for you, but you don't like it. You don't want to do that anymore. You want to change. How can we make that change happen? We all agree that it's not just decision, genie in a bottle, and it's done. So how do we get there? Yes, but there are techniques. Any psychotherapist can give you several different techniques. There are different techniques in different books all over. One that I particularly like a lot, and that we find in many of the Projeto Espiritizar books, is Parva technique. So, do you guys remember what the P stands for? Yeah, there we go. And it's the very same words in Portuguese. Finally, an acronym worked in English and in Portuguese. So, perception or acknowledgement. So first, I need to realize, hey, I don't like this behavior. I want to change it. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to hurt my siblings or my children's feelings. Acceptance. Because sometimes we realize, we have the perception, we acknowledge, but then we don't accept. We blame other people. Well, I did it because he said that. I couldn't be quiet. I couldn't just shut up. I had to do something. So first we need to accept, we need to realize, then we need to accept with us instead of just pushing to someone else. and blaming someone else for what we do. Then comes reflection. So once I realize and I accept, I will think about it. Then comes decision, the decision to change. And at last, action. So let's quickly take a look at some of them, all of them. So perception is the first step in the process of changing, because we can't change something we don't realize. It is the stage of self-awareness. It's important to pay attention to the following issues. One, this perception is supposed to be kind, free of right or wrong judgment. Don't hate yourself. It's not, oh, I suck, oh, I'm terrible, oh, I don't deserve to be alive. That's self-pity, not acknowledgement or perception. Two, it's necessary to understand the difference between your idealized self and your real self. Am I who I really think I am? And am I going to be the person I want to be super quick? No. So I need to be realistic about my expectations. I have a lot of potential. I have a lot of capabilities, but I also have a lot of limitations. And I need to learn how to overcome those limitations in order to achieve what I want. Acceptance. After perception, we are invited to fully, lovingly, and unconditionally the egotistic movements responsible for our limitations. Envy, dislove, rage, revenge. Those are all egotistic movements. Those are all things that sometimes lead us to the actions that we don't like in ourselves. We react not in a loving way. We react in a bad way. Acceptance is a proactive virtue. So accepting is not going, no, it's a proactive virtue that requires an exercise of humility in order for us to recognize our limitations. It's necessary to accept that we are still imperfect. Therefore, it is necessary to exercise humility and compassion in order to accept our limitations. Important thing, what can I do to change this limitation? And then comes my reflection. So what can I do? I'm going to reflect on what can I do to overcome my limitations. In the book, Jesus, Modelo e Guia da Família, there's a whole chapter showing us how to overcome limitations, like practical technique to overcome limitations. Then comes reflection. In this stage of the process, we will be answering the previous question. We are invited to reflect fully and consciously upon the questions we realized in the perception stage, upon our self-judgment, perfectionist, self-blame, excuses, and mental laziness that we insist on feeding. So we need to accept that we do self-judge. I'm good, I'm bad, I'm better, I'm horrible, I'm terrible. Perfectionism. We don't allow ourselves to make mistakes because we have to be perfection right off the bat. And believe it or not, it is one kind of moral laziness. And you're like, moral laziness? I work like crazy to be perfect. But it is moral laziness. Why? Because you don't want to make mistakes and fix, make mistake and fix, make and fix like everybody else. You want to do it right the first time. You don't want to have the work to come back and fix it. Yes. So it is laziness as well. And so on. So let's move on. Decision. After reflecting, our own conscience invites us to make a decision about what to do to start working on resignifying our egotistic movements. Resignification requires a firm decision towards making all necessary efforts to gradually replace egotistic movement, the egotistic movement we are working on, with the loving essential movement. So in order to replace hate with love, we need a strong decision. Because is it super easy and fast to start loving someone you hate? Again, it's not by decree. It's not today I declare I start loving so-and-so. Right? We can even write on Facebook, from today on, I love you. Right? Yeah, exactly. So today I decided that's it. Not how it happens. Due to the hard work it takes to carry out the change of habit, we are invited to develop strong and determined willpower towards change. And here, an extremely important element of this decision part of the technique is prayer, and how you pray, and what you pray for. Are you praying that you automatically love so-and-so, or are you praying that you have the strength to overcome the previous feeling and slowly change it into something better? So how are we asking for help? What kind of help are we asking for? That's very important, because like it says, very strong and determined free will. You have to stick to it. And it's a lot of work. And that's where praying right for the right things, will help you have the strength to keep going and not give up and sit in the road and say, I'll do it on the next life. Action. Once we've made the decision to change, it becomes essential to consciously act in order to slowly and gently replace the egotistic movement with the proactive essential movement. The action of changing will go through 4 stages. First stage, the acknowledgement of an egotistic movement we are working on appears after its manifestation. So after I was really mean to my brother or my sister or my children or my parents, I will realize it. I was like, oh, shoot. I said I wasn't going to do this anymore. I only realized after I've done it. It's a learning accomplishment stage where we learn from our mistakes. So I only realized after I've done it. But I realized I did it. So that's first stage number 1. Just like speaking English. You only realize you said it wrong after it's out. And you're like... Sometimes we say, no, sorry, what I meant was... We still need to ask for forgiveness, right? Second stage. Perception starts during the manifestation of the egotistic movement, making it possible for the individual to analyze it better in order to overcome or even change it. So I'm there on Facebook. Message to all those people out there who keep taking care of my life and looking at my page. In the middle of the message, or in the middle of like a very angry email to my boss, I look at it and I'm like, why am I doing this? Is this the best option? Should I be doing this? Is it a good idea? So this is the second stage. When you realize halfway through it, and then you take a step back, think about it, and don't finish what you started. Third stage. Perception starts before the manifestation of the egotistic movement. So I want to show the finger and call the driver beside me names, but then before I do it, I'm like, oh, shouldn't do it. So it starts before the manifestation of the egotistic movement, making it possible for the individual to choose not to do it. I have only one more slide. To choose not to do it through proper use of free will. Because again, sometimes we realize before we do it, but we still choose to do it. Sometimes we know it's wrong, but we do it anyway because we have free will, right? But at least we realized before. Our stage. The individual starts to realize that the manifestations of the egotistic movement that we are working on are more and more sparse until the change is completed, when there are no more manifestations because the egotistic feeling was transformed into an essential virtue. And here we can be talking about one specific feeling, like one thing I don't like about myself, my temper. So I'm going to work all those stages on my temper, on losing my patience. Jealousy. I'm going to work all of the stages on jealousy. So whatever feeling I want to change, the technique is the same. But then again, virtue of the month. What do I need for those changes? Patience. So what do we want? Patience. When do we want it? Now. Right? Like you sit there and you're like, come on, patient, come, I don't have all day, I don't have all day. Right? You don't have patience to wait for patience. Okay, so in closing, I have just a small piece from the message that actually gave the name to the lecture, Sheath Your Sword. It's from Living Spring, Fonte Viva, text 114 from Emmanuel. In our learning as Christians, let us remember the words of the Master. Sheath your sword. And he said that when they came to arrest him, to take him for judgment. And Peter cut the ear of one of the soldiers. And Jesus said, sheath your sword. I will go through what I have to go through. Feeding into the war with others, we lose ourselves in the outer darkness. É a picuinha, a briga, o não dar o braço a torcer. Fighting the good fight, we should keep fighting within us. We want to change others, but we don't want to work on changing ourselves first. Okay, let us make peace with those around us, fighting against shadows that still disturb our existence, so that the kingdom of light will live within us. With spears in our hands, we will never achieve the good we want. The cross of the Master is shaped as the sword with its blade pointing down. Let us remember thus that by sacrificing himself on the symbolic sword, properly sheathed, Jesus gave man the blessing of peace with happiness and renovation. From the book Living Spring by Emmanuel, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Any questions? No? So, like I said, here are the sources if anybody wants to check. And you did the final prayer there, so we can do it here too. Okay. So is anybody feeling comfortable to do a final prayer? Dear Lord, we thank you once again for the opportunity to be here. We thank you for all the lessons that we have, for all the material you have available for us, should we decide to reach for it. Lord, we ask you for your protection and your enlightenment for all of our brothers and sisters here today, all of those who could not be here, all of your children going through difficult times, force, violence. We ask you for your mercy and forgiveness that you always give us freely. Lord, may we take what we learned here today and apply it to our daily lives. May we be able to develop our patience. May we be able to look into ourselves, to reflect, and to have the willpower to make the changes we need to make. May we be able in our prayers to align our will with God's will, with the divine will, so that we have strength to develop our virtues and finally learn to love and follow the divine ways. So now we're going for the pass. I also invite everybody after the pass to stay in prayer, because when everybody leaves and goes to the other room and the kids start running and yelling and we haven't finished the pass yet, it disturbs a little the work. So if we could stay to the end and keep praying as soon as we're done with the pass, then we can all stay together.
Gente, alguns de vocês devem ter reparado lá embaixo, agora a gente tem uma reciclagem na universidade do fundo fora os pequenos. Então, são bem-vindos a uma forma também de levantar fins comerciais. E por favor, dia 21, 22 e 23 de julho, está começando a vender os títulos para o seminário e projetos que utilizaram a partir dessa semana, vão ser transferências de bônus, pontos, etc. Vão ser $40 por pessoa. Quem quiser comprar o almoço também já sabe, de $50. Vão ser sexta-feira à noite, 2 horas de seminário, 6 horas de seminário no sábado e 4 horas extra. São 2 horas. Muito mais 4 horas também. São 12, por causa que sexta-feira não é exatamente parte específica de seminário, é uma palestra pública. Não é só que a gente convida todo mundo, porque vai ser uma palestra muito legal, porque a gente está falando do poder da comunicação e da oração. Que é maravilhoso. Foi? Sábado e domingo nessas horas, e uma vez de nós temos atividade da outra vez, e na sexta vai até 6 horas da tarde. Sexta começa às 7, vai até as 8. Então, o importante com crianças, nós vamos estar estruturando uma solução para mais ou menos um ano de apresentação mas se alguém tiver sugestões, provavelmente pode criar alguma coisa que nós vamos ver para as crianças é legal. Hoje nós temos que estar se tiver que não consegue se concentrar no trabalho. Mas eu vou tentar alguma coisa que não gênero, ou se a gente tiver uma sugestão para os assuntos das suas casas. Ok? 21, 22 e 23 de julho. Vai ser muito legal. Vai ser.
Mas olha isso. Dentro das 2 primeiras semanas de setembro, nós vamos mandar uma enquete no Facebook para data, horário, etc. Mas a gente vai estar fazendo a primeira reunião do Clube do Livro. O primeiro livro é há 2.000 anos. Nós temos vários na biblioteca e nós